You're okay. You're a pretty one. You're shaking.
The first couple of days he was here, he was growling in his kennel. He seemed aggressive to us, you know. It turned out he was just really scared. Once we got him out of his kennel and on walks, he's a friendly goofball, as you can see. You know, this is the kind of dog that in a county shelter or a high-kill shelter would be put down after the stray hold. He would have been euthanized after 72 hours.
What happened with the last paycheck? Tell me about that.
Last Friday, we received our monthly check with a note in it saying this would be the last check.
Did you know this was coming?
All we know is that we've been trying to meet with the city manager since June, and she's refused to meet with us. She's created 2 animal ordinances this year, both of which were totally regressive. One of them was created after a committee sat and came up with a lot of good ideas, and they basically disbanded the committee and didn't take any of their recommendations.
So who's this?
This is Ben Lepley.
Yeah.
Ben Lepley.
I'm Ben Lepley, and this is Beto Lepley. So Beto was adopted with his brother Alfie last year at the Bisbee Animal Shelter. And they were kittens. They were rescued from underneath the house. And their siblings got eaten by a snake. So I heard. And they've been mine for about a year now. And the adoption process was amazing. And it was just really a nice personal service. And I could really tell that they really cared for Alfie and Beto. I mean, I think, you know, making sure that our animals are taken care of locally and making sure that the Bisbee Animal Shelter gets a new contract that goes in perpetuity, I think is super important. And that it's a no-kill shelter. I mean, that's critical, because otherwise, who knows, Beto would have been ashes.
Did the council have any say in this decision?
They didn't even know about
the shelter?
She's kept them totally out of it. The council didn't know the animal committee, the Animal Ordinance Commission was being disbanded until it was on the agenda, and Joni was the liaison and wasn't even told.
Oh, really?
So all of this stuff has happened.
So who's driving this?
Teresa and David.
Teresa and David.
And I think the attorneys probably, you know.
And do you think there's a personal vendetta?
Yes,
okay.
I do.
A personal vendetta here.
Say it again.
I said personal vendetta here. Is that what we're dealing with, do you think?
I don't know. We can't really figure out why the mayor has suddenly shifted his opinion so drastically on what should happen with the animal shelter. We've never had a meeting with the city where they've said, you know, here are some areas of improvement, or, you know, we've never had any sort of meeting where they've given us any kind of input or criticism or anything.
This is Norma Jean. She's getting adopted today. This is Brandy. She's also getting adopted today.
This year when we reached out, the mayor told us the city manager will now be handling your contract. We reached out to her. That's when she said, I won't be renewing your contract due to fiscal uncertainties around sales tax revenue because of COVID. So we thought, okay, well that's, you know, this was in mid-June. So she put us on kind of a month-to-month basis.
So we live next to this fellow that's had feral cats living here for many, many years. And through the Bisbee Friends of the Animal Shelter and through the spay and neuter program, we've brought probably over 60 cats to the animal shelter. And currently, what was a huge feral cat problem here, it was really out of control. There were even javelinas living here and some dead ones too. It was awful. Through the Friends of the Animal Shelter and friends that have helped out, like such as the neighbors that were living here before, there's only about 4 or 5 cats here now, feral cats, but there's a cat colony that the Friends of the Animal Shelter has created that the cats are fed every day, they're taken care of, they've become even somewhat tame at this point, and they're in great shape. So what started out as a huge problem for us in our community, and it was really like disease ridden and dead cats, sick cats, all of it is a mess. We now have just a handful of some really nice cats that are well fed and taken care of and are healthy and happy.
So the city pays $6,666 a month, which is $80,000 a year. And last year, Friends of the Animal Shelter raised an additional $100,000. So, part of that funded community spay-neuter, our dog park, which costs $2,500 a year. The vast majority of that money went into the animal shelter. So now the city's only interested in holding animals for the amount of time that is legally required, the minimum amount of time that is legally required. So for a stray dog or cat, that's 3 days. So they wanted us to bid just on the hold time that's legally required. So we don't really want to run a shelter that only holds animals for the minimum amount of time. We didn't feel that we had the accounting capabilities to bill that way. It would be very labor intensive. So we bid the contract as we had in the past, just as a flat rate, and indicated that we'd be willing to negotiate on that rate. That if it's a money issue, we can talk about it. So I think what's going to happen is they're going to say that our response to the RFP was a non-response. That because we didn't bid it exactly the way they asked, that we're not compliant, and then they can throw out our bid.
Or is there saying a minimum of 3 days hold and then the animal's put to sleep?
That's what it seems like.
Right.
What's an average for a dog to be adopted?
A Chihuahua, probably 2 days.
Right.
Okay.
Or a terrier. A pit bull we could have for 9 months.
Bemo's been here since November of 2019. He's been here a year now. Come here, buddy.
Especially if it's rambunctious, because our staff works with them, and eventually
To train him and
and
okay.
they take them for walks and teach them
manners and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Right.
But yeah,
And you have a
depends.
foster program also?
we do. We have a lot
Yeah.
of people who foster kittens in particular, because we get litters of kittens in from feral moms. Sometimes we get them without the mom, so we have people who bottle feed them and take care of them. But we have a lot of fosters in the community.
Hi, pretty one. Hi, pretty one. Hi.
They're
Oh my
trying to
God.
Amy
This
Coney
is the
Barrett
last
this thing.
meeting?
This is their very last meeting, and they're trying to ram this through.
So our goal is to wait until somebody's moderating the meeting who has a heart, and not an ego.
So maybe-
The next mayor and council will be seated December 1st, and we would really like to see them consider community input and make a decision at that point.
There's something else I want to say.
Yeah, say it.
So from the very beginning, when our contract wasn't renewed and we started reaching out to council members to ask what the future was of the shelter and what was happening, from the very beginning, I've said that the animal shelter is a community asset that we've all worked to build up. Dozens of volunteers, all the people who worked at Gimme Shelter and donated, and the people who help at the spay-neuter clinics, and people who transport animals to vet appointments, and the fosters, and it's endless. This whole community, $5 at a time. We don't get giant donations. We get tons and tons of, $5, $25, $100. This community has built up this animal shelter, and I think it's a real asset to our small community. And so from the beginning, my request was, if we're going to defund this shelter or close this shelter or change the mission of this no-kill shelter, it needs to be by a vote of the mayor and council, and not be done by the city manager, who's been here for a year, who frankly doesn't know this community. The last 4 city managers before her only lasted under 2 years apiece. So if history's any indication, I don't know what her longevity is going to be, but I do know that this community has put a lot into this animal shelter, and I think the mayor and council need to make the decision on its future.